All right, I'm Jeff Burkus. I'm joined by Robert Schmitz of Windy City Gridiron. We are going to go through some betting basics. This is something that we've talked about a lot throughout the year. We wanted to kind of get into it. We've had a lot of interaction with people on Twitter, with people on the website say, I'm interested in sports betting. I don't really know what that all means. We've got a couple things that we can do here to maybe help explain and set up just to get people started, and then maybe get into it a little later on another episode where we get into maybe player props or things like that. But I thought, let's all just get on a basic line here of what it is that we're talking about. And you are someone who has not necessarily done a ton of betting. Am I right?
You are correct. I don't live in a sportsbook state. I live in Texas. So while places around the country are starting to roll out more and more and more sports betting options, I sit here and just play what if, and that's as far as I go. So zero experience, been picking the spread for about 2 years now with some money line. I personally avoid over under, but I'm sure I'm stealing your thunder a little bit because
No?
there could be some people that don't even know what that means. So we wanted to be two people that could dive in and give at least a first look or a first blush take at what sports betting is before somebody goes out and throws down $500 on a spread line thinking that it was a money line and ends up in the hole.
Yeah, and I think that basically gambling can be fun, but it is a fun thing if you do it within limits. So let's just make sure we say that up top, know what your limits are. And we're going to get into some of that stuff, how to calculate what a bet is, things like that. If there are other things that you want to know about betting, let us know, and we can try to put that together into something that's somewhat understandable. So I prepared a presentation, which seems very official. So hopefully that works for everybody, but it just felt a little nicer to put some visuals on here as opposed to us just talking through something without those visual aids. So the first thing that I want to talk about is what's called the spread, and then this concept of the VIG. Okay. So do you know what the VIG is, Robert?
I don't.
Okay, great. So we're already in good shape here. So what I did was I pulled a screenshot from the Caesars app. That's the app that I use the most in betting. It's what I'll use for my standard bets. It's where I have my bankroll sitting for the most part. I have some in FanDuel as well. There are about 10 different apps that you can use to put money into for sports betting. They all have pluses and minuses. It just seems that Caesars has been the one that I've kind of liked a little bit more than others. Every game will have this at the top. It will show the these lines here. It'll be the spread, the money line, and then total points. So I wanted to start with the spread, and so you'll hear that term a lot. What's the spread of the game? Kansas City's a 5-point favorite, or what does that mean, right? And so I just pulled two games because I thought these were kind of interesting to show. So Carolina Panthers at Arizona Cardinals, they have a plus 10.5 on the spread. So what that means is that Carolina has 10 and a half points in the game to make it a handicap even 50-50 proposition for people to bet. So if you liked the Carolina Panthers and you wanted to bet them because you think they can keep a close game with the Arizona Cardinals, that would be your bet. If you really like the Cardinals and you think that they're going to win by more than 10 and a half points, then you would want to bet the Arizona Cardinals in that instance. And so the spread is a way for Vegas, or the books now, they're not all in Vegas, but the books to make it a 50-50 proposition. So they're trying to handicap it so that each side has about an equal chance to get it.
Mm-hmm.
What they want to do is they want to induce enough betting on both sides of the line so that they win no matter what. So that's really their motivation. It's not necessarily that they say for sure Carolina is 10 and a half point better than the Panthers. What they're saying is we think that that line will get us enough even betting on both sides that we're going to make money regardless of what the outcome is.
Right.
Okay. And so this other number here right below the plus 10 and a half and the minus 10 and a half, that's the vig, right? That's what the take is basically, because you see what that number means, minus 110, is that I would need to bet $110 to win $100 back on that bet. And if I bet the Carolina Panthers $110 to win $100 back, and you bet the Arizona Cardinals at minus 10.5, $110 to get $100 back. Well, Vegas has made $10 off of each bet no matter what, and then they're going to take the other bet to pay the other person, right? So their whole point is to try to make a really solid line that will induce betting on both sides. That's all it is, right? And so I like to think of this: if you and I were hanging out together and we wanted to bet on this game, and you were like, "You're crazy, man. The Cardinals aren't going to win by 11 points. Let's bet." And we both put $20 down on the table, right? The one person's going to pick it up at the end of the day, and they're going to get $40. But let's say we didn't trust each other. We didn't trust each other to pay up, and so we had a third friend. Let's say Lester, and we said, "Lester, hold $20 from each of us," right? And Lester's like, "Guys, grow up. I'm not going to do this unless I get a couple bucks to keep."
And so we pay him to do it for us.
Exactly.
That makes sense.
That's basically what this is. If you want, it's a payment to make that bet so that you can win it from somebody else. It just so happens that it's somebody that you probably don't know, but that's basically what this is. So if I were to, we'll get into unit bets here in a little bit, but if I were to bet, say, $10 on the Panthers at plus 10.5 at minus 110, I would win $19.09 back, not $20. So that 91 cents that's missing, that's the VIG. Could be called the rake, could be called the cut, whatever you want to call it. I most commonly call the VIG. Have you ever played poker in a poker room?
Not in an official one.
Okay. So if you go over to a friend's house and you buy in $20 worth of chips, at the end of the night, you're probably going to get an equivalent amount back unless somebody's an idiot and did something wrong with the till, or you have to pay a couple bucks in for chips to the host or something like that, right? But for the most part, there's no one's taking a cut.
It's 1-to-1.
Right. If you go to a card room in a casino, right, they have to pay the dealer, they have to pay for lights and free drinks and poker chips and cards and all that. So they take, I think it's like 10% of the pot and they put it below the table, right? So that's another way to think of it too. Like, you are in a casino, you are paying for the privilege of putting in this bet and for this person to, or this entity to be putting this out. So that's what that means. Very important.
So does that mean, not to interrupt you, because now 110 makes a lot of sense, right? That you would have to put in, what am I seeing correctly, $475 to win $100 extra on the Cardinals money line. So
you're a little ahead with the money line piece, but yes, that's what that number means.
Right. Yep. Okay. So does that mean that when it's plus, that you put in $100 and you win back $360 on top of that 100 and take back $460?
Correct. You are one slide ahead, but that is perfect.
I'm sure I am a little bit, but sitting on the VIG and minus 110, honestly, I have always wondered how to read that. And so clearing that up helps me a lot.
So I want to direct your attention to the second game that I pulled here.
Right.
So the Vikings are going to the Chargers, and there's a 3-point spread there.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you see that line here now is minus 105 for the Vikings and minus 115 for the Chargers.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a little bit better money return if you bet the Vikings at +3 than there would be betting the Chargers at -3. And what I think that means, I mean, I'm pretty sure what that means is that there's a lot of money going to the Chargers at -3. And so they've made it less attractive for you to put money on the Chargers and more attractive for you to put it on the Vikings so that it evens out. Now, if money keeps pouring onto the Chargers, then they've made they've drawn the line in an incorrect spot. They've put the spread in an incorrect spot, and so they will move the money. They will move the spread line. So you could see if more money continues to get pushed in to the Chargers, you could see them move that line up to 3.5.
Right, because at the risk of exposing myself here and ending up with an incorrect prediction, that seems awfully, let's say, optimistic to think that a very strong, like a Vikings team that's kind of struggling to find itself, and that at every turn it's almost found itself. It's found sudden way to lose is going to just march into Justin Herbert's, albeit not exactly like ultra well defended home, because it's not like they've got some crazy
Right.
fan base that's going to really
Right.
boost them. But even so, like, they're going to come to Justin Herbert's home turf against a tough out Cardinals team that has not lost to, let's say, like lower tier competition, and they're gonna beat them. Because based on my last memory, am I seeing, or I remember, what is it, Vegas tends to give, I think it's 1.5 points now to home and field advantage, so there's a good chunk of that -3 that's just because the Chargers are at home, right?
Yeah, I mean, traditionally it was always thought of as 3 points as home field advantage. It's probably a little less now just because of so much parity in the NFL. But like you said, Chargers might not have much of a home field advantage. But yeah, they draw the line at 3. The public, at least what I think happens here, is that there's more money going to the Chargers to the point where they're trying to make it a little more attractive to get some more money back on
Right.
the Vikings,
I picked the
but not enough to
Chargers.
move the
I
line
didn't
yet.
flinch. I tend to imagine that that was a pretty common reaction to think, ooh, that's not enough for me to take the Vikings. Like, I probably would have thought about it at 5.5 just to pick a number,
Right.
but less than that, I feel pretty good about LAC coming out on top, you know?
Well, even if you moved it to 3.5, which is the hook, as they call it, right? That opens up a world of possibilities. Can
Right.
you imagine the Vikings keeping it within a field goal? Yeah, right. I can, but if it's just a flat 3, it might not be as attractive. Chargers are a better team; they're at home, right? And so it is harder for me to think that that's an attractive line. But that's something to look at. There are times when you can get better return on a straight bet like this, on a handicapped bet,
Hmm.
and sometimes that's worth betting. Sometimes it's worth going against the crowd, right? And so that's something to keep in mind. So I want to move on to money line here. So money line is picking winners. So if someone says bet the money line, it's just picking the result. It's not picking. Don't worry about the spread in a money line bet. So if you're going to bet the money line, you're betting the winner. And I picked these two games because one of them's got a really big spread and one of them's got a close spread, and you can see how much different these numbers are. And so if we work on that first Panthers line, so let's say you were bold. I don't know why you do this, but let's say you were bold and you said Panthers are going to march in and they're
They're
going
going to
they're
beat
they're going to
Arizona.
outright beat the Cardinals. I wouldn't do that, but let's say you did, and you get this plus 360. So what does that mean? Well, if you bet $10, you're going to win 46, which means you get your original $10 back and you get 36 additional dollars,
Mhm.
right? So that's the easy way to look at that. Plus 360 is anything that's plus. That's what you get back if you think about it in 10 or $100
Right.
increments, right? So the vig, the take is implied on that flip side of it, right? So if you take those two numbers, those are really big numbers apart. It's really easy to see it when it's minus 110 and minus 110 on a
Mhm.
handicapped bet. But if it's plus 360 and minus 475, it's a really far way apart, right?
Right.
But if you did the math and you tried to like even it out by putting in bets on both sides, you couldn't make it equal, right? Like you
Sure.
couldn't put enough money in to make it equal. So that's where that implied um, where the vig is on money line. So don't worry about Vegas; they're going to make their money.
Oh,
Don't worry
sure.
about your book; they're going to make their money.
But it's so interesting that you pick these two games because, and again, I'm not the world's greatest bettor here, but I feel like Arizona and Carolina have a great spread, a really interesting spread. Because once you get into those double digit areas, I mean, all it takes, right, is one poor throw that gets taken back for 6, and all of a sudden Carolina loses, still loses, but they lose by 6. And nobody bats an eye in the world of records and divisions, but bettors see the spread swing and a whole bunch of people go from winning and losing. On the flip side, I just talked a lot of mess on the Vikings, but plus 145 to outright win a game that I see that it could easily be close because I do think the Vikings are better than their record. That's actually got a good bit of juice on it. You know what I mean? Like, you tell me what you think. Maybe I'm off my rocker here, but put in $100 or put in $170 to maybe win 100 is a lot less convincing than putting in $10, potentially coming out with 25 on the Vikings. That while I don't think their spread is enticing enough because you just don't get enough back, doubling your money off of the ball bouncing the right way totally different story. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and it's interesting when you have close games that sometimes if you like the underdog, it might actually be a little better just to take the money line because you get better odds rather than that 50-50 minus 110 or minus 105 that you see here. And so
Right.
that's something then in terms of strategy that you can kind of think about, and maybe we can do another show on that. But for right now, if you want to think about money line, taking underdogs on the money line is going to get you a better return.
Right.
There's nothing wrong with taking a favorite on a money line. It's a very safe bet. If you wanted to bet the Cardinals, like it's a safe bet, but there's not a lot of money that's going to come back to you, right? So betting, $10 on the Cardinals here, I think you'd win about $12 back, right? And
Right.
so that it's not a lot of money to win back, but there's nothing wrong with that.
Nothing
There's
wrong
nothing
with
wrong
that.
with that. If you just want to put a money line bet in just to kind of get a little in the
Sure.
game, there's nothing wrong with it.
But to your
So
point, I mean, this is where underdog perception can come into play, right? Like, let me pick on one. So we are in the middle of the Bears bye week, right? And weeks ago, they were marching into Las Vegas. And I don't know how you were feeling about the game, but the Bears had 5.5 points, which was a slam dunk for the spread because I think a lot of Bears fans knew that no matter how bad the team was, Vegas was so volatile that all it would take was the right bounce of the ball or a decent game plan from Sean Desai, and you never know. Those would have been the words that I would use. And to your point, the spread doesn't get you that much. Great, the Bears won the game by 11 points, but they were given 5.5 points in the spread, so like you're saying, you put in 10, you get 19. If you took them on the money line, I don't know what it is off the top of my head, but if you like them that much, if you're thinking, I don't just think the Bears are going to cover, I think the Bears might actually win, you
right.
stand to gain a lot more with that same unit bet than you do with the spread. The spread seems like kind of an every game bet. Like you would win more if you played the spread over multiple football games, whereas if you want to win off of underdogs, you could bet a whole lot of different money lines, and if you lose 4 but win, let's say 2, and those 2 had really low odds, you might come out on top.
Very true. There's a lot of different strategies that you can take in terms of how you stack your money, how you want to approach different games. There's parlays, there's props, there's a bunch of different stuff we can get into that we can. It would take longer than this episode is planned for, so
Not
we'll leave
basics.
it there. I want to run through over unders real quick too, because sometimes these are fun bets, particularly if you take the overs. A lot of times, Sam Householder and I have talked betting a lot. Bears teams in the past, you just kind of hammer the under because their defenses are usually pretty good and their offenses are not, and so generally they get teams to kind of slog down with them, and so basically that's the last number here. So an over under is going to be listed in terms of total points for both teams. And so you're going to take what you believe the final score and add those two numbers up between the two teams. And if you think that that's going to be over, say 44 in this game, then you would want to bet the over. So again, this goes back to a handicapped number. So this is a minus 110 on either side of it. So we go back to that $10 would win you 1909. Again, picking these two games is kind of interesting because 44 is kind of a low number for an NFL game. I would say a really low number is going to be like 38, 39. 44 is on the low-ish end, and that's probably because the book does not believe that the Panthers can score very much. This is not an indication that the Cardinals won't score; they will, and they know that Carolina's defense is good, or goodish, maybe. So that number is kind of interesting. I mean, if I had to bet something on this game, to be honest with you, the over 44 is probably what I would do, just because I think Carolina can luck into a few points, and I think the Cardinals can probably put up in the 30s themselves. Now the other game is higher, which 53.5, right? And so that's a higher number. You can see over-unders in the NFL get into the upper 50s generally, but this is kind of a high number for these two teams.
Right.
Chargers have a good defense. or they have a really good defensive coach too. So anyway, if I had to pick something on this, if I had to pick this game, I would still take the Chargers -3. But between the over under, I like the under on this one. But again, these are handicapped bets, and so this is at least the what is going to be given to you on every game. There are some sites where you can adjust these numbers, right? You can pick alternative lines, you can pick alternative over unders, but every single book is going to have these three options for you to bet on. So you might be asking,
How
what do
much
I
I
bet?
bet?
Right?
I mean, that would be my huge question. I know when I was thinking Texas might get sports betting legalized, I thought long and hard. I was like, well, I mean, I think I know a thing or two about sports. So how much do you bet? $100 per? Like, how do you jump in on this? How do you even determine this number?
So my recommendation is that you consider this like buying a game. How much are you willing to pay for a new experience? And if you don't get any of this money back, are you going to be financially hurt? Are you going to be okay with it? Like that's how you should determine this because the reality is you're not going to be pulling this money back frequently. If you spiked a big win early and you wanted to take some money out, maybe that happens. I just don't know a lot of people that do that. Generally, you're putting money in and you're continuing to bet that money throughout the season. If you bet other sports, which I know nothing about, I only bet football because I don't really know anything about another sport. But for me, like I'm betting that money throughout the year. And even if I'm doing well at certain points, there's probably other points where I'm going to have a bad week or two, right? So I'm looking at it from start of the year to end of the year, and then maybe I'll think about taking money out. But that's my first question is what do you feel comfortable putting in that if you lost it all, it wouldn't hurt you? That's my recommendation for what you start off with. And that would be what I would consider your bankroll. And then to figure out what your unit bet is, what the size of your bet should be on most occasions, I would suggest picking one of these two numbers. Now, 30 divided by 33, that is a somewhat aggressive number to get your unit bet. And dividing it by 50 would be a conservative number. I'm more of a divided by 50 kind of guy. My cousin, who is a very intelligent actuary, he suggests divided by 33. Okay. So take what you will, whatever makes you feel most comfortable. But I think the right number is going to be somewhere within that. So if you think about this in terms of, $100, right? So for every $100 you buy in with, if you want to take the 33 number, that's $3. That's a $3 bet. If you want to take the 50 number, it's a $2 bet. Okay. So if you wanted to buy in with $50, that's what you felt comfortable with, then your bet might be $1. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like they'll take whatever increment that you're interested in. Okay. Like there's no minimums on most of these places, right? Like you can bet whatever it is that you feel comfortable with. And so don't think that you have to put in some unreal amount of money to have fun. I've put $1 on a game and then had a lot of fun cheering for that side. Like it doesn't actually matter. It's more about it's basically this is what I think is going to happen. So I'm going to put some money on it and we're going to have fun watching to see if that happens. That's really what it's all about.
Right.
So this is how you should think about your betting from now on, right? Once you have determined your bankroll and you determine it, are you a more aggressive person, divide by 33? Are you a more conservative person in terms of what you feel comfortable putting in the middle, divide by 50? You're going to get a number. And that number is going to be your 1 unit bet. Now, that's going to be probably the majority of what you bet. Now, if you really like something, I am really on this particular side this week. I just think this is really good bet. You might want to do a 2 unit bet. Beyond that, you probably don't do that. Like then the unit thing doesn't matter, right? Don't put 7 units on a bet, right? Like that, because then you're losing yourself a little bit here.
And just speaking to my own attitude, right? I feel like the unit thing helps because it is supposed to be about fun. You're
Right.
not trying to necessarily put money on the Chiefs to send your child to college. I don't know.
I would hope not.
Like, well,
Well,
you
or you're a
can.
professional gambler and you're not watching this episode.
Sure, 100%. It's more to say, like, I'm envisioning a world where, let's say my unit bet is $10, right?
Right.
So maybe I'm super confident on the Bears this week, and so I consider putting $100 on them. Well, if they lose, my team lost. I lost 10 unit bets, and now I'm like, there's just a bigger cost to where you put 2 units down, you at worst case lost somewhere between 2/33 or 2/50 of your bankroll, and you're that much closer to not being able to play the game anymore. I
Right.
get it. It's kind
Right.
of a safeguard as much as anything
17
else.
17 games, 18 weeks, right? And then the playoffs, you're going to want money in the playoffs, right? Like, I mean, that it's a discipline thing, right? And it's, you don't have to bet everything. I should say that right now. Like, that's, that's not exactly what you want to think you have to do. Like, you don't have to go down and bet every line or bet, it's just what you feel like you can get some value in.
There's a game
Uh,
I was seeing just this week that I'll pick out as I think the perfect example of exactly that, right? It was, oh gosh, it's the one that Atlanta's involved in. So the Falcons are at Dallas, who just lost to Denver. And Dallas is, I think, objectively better than Atlanta. But
Right.
Atlanta, with a veteran quarterback, enough weapons to potentially make noise, and Dallas being, Cowboys are great, kind of a disappointing team over the last 15 years that you never know when the Broncos kind of thing is going to happen. I would not bet anything on this game because
Yeah, you want to stay away.
That's a Cowboys, Cowboys have 8 points on the spread. So is Atlanta going to lose by that much? That's a great question. Is Atlanta going to lose at all? Probably, but I don't really know. How many
Right.
points are going to be in that game? I have no clue. Like,
Right.
if you made me bet this game, it is, I could probably have my cat push the buttons and do a better job than me because that's just how it feels sometimes. True
Right.
randomness might do better. So, to your point, if there's a game out there that you don't like, don't touch it. And that's all right.
There's plenty of games I don't bet, right? There's plenty of teams that I just think are too volatile, and
Like
I never
who?
touch them. Oh, boy, like right now, I don't know what the Steelers. I think the Steelers are bad, but they keep seeming to like win games and muck them up, right? And so I'm confused by them, right?
I feel like
It's-
the exact opposite is the Bengals, right?
Mm.
Where I think the Bengals are relatively good, but man, they seem more likely to just drop a stinker off at the office here and there. And so you just kind of end up on edge. They should never have lost to Chicago, for instance. And I watched that game. Like, that
Right.
team looked completely different than the team we've seen play a lot of games. So, like you're saying, whether it's a team, whether it's a game, whether it's a specific situation, I don't bet over under. I hate the over under. Like, personal opinion, I think over under is true guesswork. I would tell you right now, I think that Carolina and Arizona would probably hit the under, and then all of a sudden, I keep using Chicago because I'm a Bears fan. The Bears and the Steelers combined for 55 points. I mean, what? And so, I mean, I don't like that, so I avoid it. To your point,
Right. And I just want to kind of follow up or finish out this slide by saying that there's nothing wrong with a half unit bet, right? Particularly if you get into things like player props or things that are maybe not worth a full bet in your mind, or maybe you kind of like this line, but you're not really sure. Just cut your bet in half. And then you might hear people say, I put a sprinkle on this. Okay. To me, that's like a quarter of a bet, a quarter of a unit, or a tenth of a unit, or something like that, where maybe you just have something fun that you just like, and you just want to put $1 on it, whatever it is, doesn't matter. That there's no like minimum in my mind, right? Like if you just have a bet that you like, fine, go that way. But I don't like putting too much on one particular game, because there's so many odds in this game. Is the NFL is so tightly contested every week that it's hard to put too much percentage of your bankroll into something. So the last picture here is a bet slip, and this is what it would look like on Caesars if you made a few bets. And this is a couple bets that I like. If I were to have to pick a money line, an over under, and a spread, and then I used 1 unit, half unit, and 2 units just to kind of show what that looks like. Okay, so the Browns play the Patriots this week, and it's a pretty close spread. I think it's 2.5 points. The Browns are underdogs. So I took the money line on the Browns because I think they can go into Foxborough and win just as easy as they can cover there. So I think it's a coin flip game. I like that I'm getting positive money. I think the Browns have all the ability in the world to win this game. So I'm just taking them. And I feel like that's like a 1 unit bet. Okay.
And just because I want to talk about it, this was one that I felt passionately about too. The Browns have completely lost their way on offense, and they kind of seem to find it and then lose it again. And their defense seems like it's going through the same transition where I think they have probably the most talented defensive roster in the NFL. Like,
Yeah.
maybe now the Rams are up there because and Von Miller pushed them over the edge, but I mean,
Sure.
like, that secondary is loaded. Joke fit right in, instant star. Myles Garrett, the obvious crown jewel of that defense. The Browns are an immeasurably more talented team than New England, who I think is exactly like Pittsburgh, right? Your exact description of, I think they're not good, but they keep winning. Is perfect. So,
Right.
are the Browns going to be able to beat Belichick in New England? That's a
Right.
tough ask, but they very easily could. And here you get plus money on it. You know,
Right.
you get for a coin flip game, you risk 10, but you get 20 back, which is way safer than like a lot of spread bets, even. You know.
Yeah, absolutely. And then just to move on to the next one, over under bet, Seattle playing the Packers. And 49 is not a huge number for an over under. I assume Rodgers is going to play. I assume Russell Wilson is coming back. So I would think that those two offenses would have some juice. Those guys going against each other, I'd imagine that there's probably going to be some points. It's something that I would put a half unit on. It's not something I feel like totally confident about. Like you say, over unders can be really weird. Game flow is odd, but I'd feel kind of good about that one. That one
Sure.
to me seems like a pretty good bet. So I went over 49 on that over under for a half a unit, and then the game that I'm really confident about. This is the game that I do have some money on, and that's Tennessee -3 against hosting the Saints. I don't know why the public must be just really on the Saints here because you see I'm getting plus 100 here. So that -3 for the Titans, the public is putting money on the Saints. So I'm actually getting good. I'm getting better numbers on that handicap line
I'm sure there's part
than
of it
normal,
that's just Derrick Henry being hurt. And don't get me wrong,
right? But Alvin Kamara's hurt too.
I was gonna say, like, I am not full send. Running backs don't matter, for crying out loud. I get the value of Derrick Henry, but they're either gonna play like Sean Payton may try to make Trevor Siemian happen again, and if he does, they're gonna lose. Like, if the Saints play Taysom Hill, truly, who knows? I mean, the Saints have been such a mystery box team, right? They beat the Packers 38-3. They've gotten their doors shuttered by like a bunch of other teams that aren't near the level of the Packers. But I'm with you. The Titans are the safe choice here. Like, they only have to overcome 3, which is a very easy number in the modern NFL. I mean, remember, everybody out there, the weirdest part about the spread is that if the Saints are down 4, they don't want a field goal at the end of the game. And so they could very easily fail to convert on 4th down sitting at the 8-yard line because they don't care about the spread. They're trying to win the football game. So all it takes is a touchdown one way or another, and -3 means nothing, you know?
Yeah, and I will say that if the game does end with the Titans winning by exactly 3, because the spread is 3, you get your money back. Right. So that's something to keep in mind too, is there are times where you'll just get your money back. And there's nothing wrong with that. You just move on. But to me, this is a good bet. I like this bet a lot. This would be a double unit bet for me. So then again, so I add these into my app I click on those buttons from before, basically, and say, like, I like the money line for the Browns. I like the over on this game. I like the Titans -3. And then I'll go to my bet slip and I'll put in my individual amounts. And then once I hit that big green button there, place bet, those are locked in. That is now money that is just like buying a ticket at the counter of the casino. And I'll wait until the end of the game. The bets that I win, I get money back. The bets that I lose goes to the casino. And so for these three bets, cost me $35. I can win a total of 7105. So for 50-50 bets, I'm actually plus money on that because a couple of the Browns were plus 150. That's not a 50-50 bet, but to me it kind of is. I do think it's a bit of a coin flip. So that's what I have, Robert. That's my primer here for people that are interested in getting going here. Anything else that you want to talk about up to top of betting?
Nothing specific. I mean, there's a lot that I know I would like to learn about parlays and all the other things that go in there. But like you're saying, this is betting basics, not advanced betting. So we'll have to say that for another episode.
Yeah, sounds good. I think props and parlays would be a good episode. I think understanding futures bets and sort of the advantages that those can have and some of the disadvantages because it locks up money for a long period of time. Those are good things to have. You know, you can still make some futures bets in terms of who's going to win the Super Bowl and things like that. To me, it's all about value. It's all about trying to push money in when you think you have value and try to make as many good value bets as possible because you are going to lose. You are going to lose bets. Like no one gets 100%. If you can get 55% of your bets that are handicapped at 50-50, you'll be able to stay ahead of the VIG and make some money. If you can get 60% of your bets, you're doing really well. And anything above that is just gravy train stuff, right? And it just doesn't last long. 2 years ago, I picked 5 games a week, five lines a week, and I was at like 67% for the year.
Hot
It was
dang.
dumb. It was dumb how good I was doing. Last year, I was below water on those picks. COVID didn't help, and it was a column, so I was writing it on Thursdays and releasing it on Fridays, and information over the weekend, certainly impacted that particular record. But you've had some success picking lines as well, but you're picking all of the league, and that's not necessarily what you should bet. You should bet the ones that you feel comfortable with, but make sure that you're putting your money where there's value.
And I think the most important thing, which maybe this would just be the most important thing for me, is make sure you're having fun. If you're not having fun, maybe don't. Like, just
Pull your money out and go spend it on an ice cream cone.
100% just my 2 cents here.
I agree.
But I think it can be really easy to hear stories about people making it big via sports betting and potentially want to take that risk. And you can. I mean, I would hope that everybody listening to this that is considering sports betting is a grown adult and they can make their own decisions. But at the same time, I think that the safer way to make sure that you don't ruffle your own financial future and you have fun is that at the very start, you stick to those unit bet ideologies so that you don't end up way over your skis and the Packers, to pick one, fumble 5 times and get 3 of those taken back, and all of a sudden a game that shouldn't have gone one way just kind of did in the middle of the regular season, as happens, and you paid the price for it.
Yeah, just because the Jags beat the Bills one week, don't be putting all your money on the Jags the next week, thinking that that's the way to do it, right? So, well, Robert, thanks. I appreciate this. I think this was probably a pretty good primer for people. And if people are listening, throw a comment down below. Let us know what it is that you would like to hear more about in terms of betting that will help you as you're getting started. So thanks for joining us, and we'll do this again.